I was planning on staying and teaching forever, and there was nothing that was going to take me away from that. But then for me, the fear of staying outweighed the fear of leaving. And that's saying a lot again, because staying would have been the easy thing to do for me. I mean, I left a job with a pension and a retirement and a consistent paycheck and benefits, but it was scarier for me to think of staying than it was to think of taking that leap and leaving. You are listening to the Beyond the Classroom podcast, a podcast for burnt out teachers who know something's gotta give. After teaching for 14 years and feeling completely burned out for way too long, in May of 2022, I made a big decision and left the classroom. I now help burnt out teachers like you take back balance and joy so you can wake up every day loving your life. In this podcast, we'll explore who you are beyond the classroom, whether you're considering leaving or wanting to make changes so you can fall in love with teaching again. Either way, I understand what it's like to be living a life that looks fun and cute on the outside. You know, summer's off, playing all day, off at 2 o'clock every day, but actually feels miserable and draining. I'm your host and coach, Sandy Patterson, and I'm so excited to help you step into your fullest potential and believe in that potential to make an impact on the world, not just survive each day. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hello there, and welcome to the very first episode of the Beyond the Classroom podcast. I am so thrilled and so honored that you're here today and that you've chosen to spend a few minutes with me on this very first episode to see what it's all about. So my name is Sandy Patterson, and I am a former teacher turned certified coach, and I am obsessed now with helping teachers discover what they really want in life and to make a plan to make it happen so you can live a life you love. And in some cases, I help them get the hell out, or I figure out ways to make changes to stay in teaching without it completely draining you. So this episode will be just a little bit different because it's the first one, and I felt like I needed to come on before I get rolling and really share my story. So that is what this episode is going to be, my story. And I think the reason that I feel like I need to share my story here is because I am a former teacher, and I made the decision in November of 2021 to leave the classroom. And I'm going to share my story here in hopes that it can inspire you or help you if you are feeling the same way, and to not feel so alone, because when I was going through these big changes in my life, I felt really, really alone. And I'm also hoping to just give you a little peek into my journey and connect with you. So I can't wait to hear what resonates with you. And not all episodes will be like this one, I promise. I'm not just going to talk about myself in every episode. So hang in there with me this time. And I can't wait, like I said, to see what resonates with you. So like I said before, I made the decision in November of 2021 to leave the classroom. And at that point, I had been teaching for 14 years. And it was all in public education in the elementary school system. I taught pretty much every grade from kindergarten all the way up to 4th grade. And my last 4 years, I taught kindergarten. And shout out to all of the kindergarten teachers, because holy cow, that is not for the faint of heart. If you can teach kindergarten, you can literally do anything. I loved teaching for a long time. I spent years and years, just like many of you, and thousands of dollars at school to learn to become a teacher. I got my credential, my reading specialist credential, my master's, and all of it was in education. And that was going to be my forever job. That was it for me. I went to school. I got a job right out of college, right out of my credential program at 22 years old. I'm not sure who thought it was a good idea to let me be in charge of 30 10-year-olds, but I did it. It wasn't pretty, but I did it. And that was going to be it for me. And honestly, if you had have asked me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, teaching was going to be my forever job. And fun fact about me, I'm like a big rule follower. I don't like being uncomfortable. I do not like inconsistency. I thrive on routine and knowing what's coming next. And, that's basically what teaching is, right? You know what's coming, you know what's happening, you can plan everything out. So for me, teaching was really safe. It was a safe job, with the benefits and the consistent paycheck. And that was it for me. And my favorite thing about teaching, absolutely by far 100%, were the relationships that I made with so many of my students and families and colleagues over the years. It was all about relationships for me. So then, dun dun dun, COVID hit, right? And as many of you know, in March of 2020, I was teaching kindergarten through the pandemic, which if you were a teacher during that time, well, that was a total shit show, right? We did it and we made it work, and it was pretty wild teaching kindergarten on Zoom for that long, but I did it. And I really felt like COVID was the perfect time for us to really look at what we were doing as an education system and as a whole, and really flip what we were doing to make the experience better for kids and better for teachers, to better support students and teachers and make the experience what kids need now. And essentially, I think the opposite happened there. It just got worse and worse and worse. And I really believe and feel, and I lived through an education system that basically relies on teachers having to do so much work outside of their contract time and so much work outside of the school day in order to be effective. And then when we came back from COVID, for me, in my experience, the student behaviors got worse, the rules were just outrageous, and teachers were basically asked to make things happen that were literally impossible. And for me, that caused a ton of stress and a ton of anxiety. And the anxiety was real. And I think those months after COVID for me really magnified it for me. And essentially for me in my journey, that's where the burnout really started, where I really started to notice the burnout. But if I think back even before COVID, I was burnt out before COVID. I was just willing to deal with it and accept that as the reality, and that's just how it's done, and this is just normal, and this is how it is, and this is how it has to be, because that's basically all I ever knew, and I had never seen a different way. And if I'm really being honest with myself, if I look back to even my first years of teaching, that anxiety and that stress was still there from the very beginning. And I just chose to push it aside because it was just how it was. So essentially what happened is at the end of the school day, people ask me all the time, like, why did you leave teaching? And like I said, essentially what happened is at the end of the school day, I just hated who I was. And I know a lot of people say they could never not teach because they love the breaks and the summers. And I said that for a long time. But I found myself even on breaks and over the summer with that same anxiety, constantly thinking about school, thinking about my students, about what would happen, about the student behaviors I wasn't equipped to deal with, a huge lack of support, and this broken system. So even on, the weekends and breaks and even the summer, like I wasn't ever truly relaxed, I guess. But at the end of the day, I was emotionally and mentally exhausted, and I didn't like the mom that I was to my boys at home. I didn't like the wife that I was becoming, the friend that I was, the daughter that I was, and most importantly, I didn't like the relationship I had with myself. And I knew that something had to give because I was physically present at the end of the day, but I wasn't mentally or emotionally available at home anymore. And that was the big thing. So a couple things happened that led me to the decision to finally put my foot down and leave teaching. So the first thing, I'll always remember this moment when I was dropping my boys off for school and the hustle in the morning, waking them up at 5:30, having to get them out the door by 6 to get to grandma's house and making sure that everything was ready for the day, lunch is packed, all that stuff. And I was just going to a job where I was absolutely miserable and my job was draining me. And I was driving them up to my mother-in-law's house, and it was a Monday morning, and I told them, I said, I cannot wait until next weekend. I already can't wait for the weekend again. And my oldest looked at me and he said, yeah, that's because you hate your job, Mom. And that hit hard for a few reasons, because I realized that my job was starting to impact and affect my family. And I told him, I said, it's not that I hate my job, because I really did. I loved teaching for a long time. I truly did. And then there got to be a point where I just didn't anymore. And that's hard to say and it's hard to admit, but it was my truth. And I told him, I said, it's not that I don't love my job. It's just that I love you more. And at that point, I felt like I wasn't willing to sacrifice the mom that I was and the person that I was for this job. And so to me, teaching felt very one-sided. And then another thing happened over time. The scales just kind of tipped for me. Like I said before, I was planning on staying and teaching forever, and there was nothing that was going to take me away from that, if nothing else, just for the stability and the consistency. But then for me, the fear of staying outweighed the fear of leaving. And that's saying a lot again, because staying would have been the easy thing to do for me. I left a job with a pension and a retirement and a consistent paycheck and benefits and all of that stuff. So it was scarier for me to think of staying than it was to think of taking that leap and leaving. One more big question that was weighing on me was, can I really do this for 30 more years? And the thought of staying there for 30 more years, staying and teaching for that long until I was able to retire, that was a hard no. It was going to destroy me. And I was giving everything to my teaching job. And really, I felt like I wasn't getting anything in return. And when I say anything, I really mean support. Like I felt, like I said before, the relationships were the biggest thing for me. And I wouldn't take any of that back. But for me, there was a huge lack of support. And maybe that sounds selfish, but it was my truth. And by no means for me was this decision to leave made lightly. And I went back and forth a lot. I cried a lot of tears, and I am not a quitter. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And so I struggled for a long time with leaving teaching, but I felt like I was a quitter. Like I felt like I was giving up on my students. I felt like I was giving up on basically who I had become over the past 14 years, because that's all I knew how to do. That's all I know, or all I knew was how to teach. But I finally came to peace with my decision that that was the best decision for me and my family, even though I wasn't quite sure at the time where the future was going to lead. And so I also realized that me staying wasn't going to change anything. I wasn't going to fix the system. And yes, I was making a difference in kids' lives every day and building those relationships, and I adored my colleagues, but it was just the best decision for me. And so after lots and lots of tears and crying and lots of back and forth, it was basically like a roller coaster ride. I made the decision to leave the classroom in June of 2022. That was my last day in the classroom. I took a leave of absence from my district. So right now, technically at the time of recording this, I still have a spot open in my district, but I most likely 99% will not return next year, because I've discovered who I am outside of teaching by taking that leap and trusting myself. And this is not to say that I'll never go back, because never say never, right? However, I found so much joy and so much peace outside of the classroom. So in this podcast, it is my hope to help you discover who you are beyond the classroom. And by no means am I going to try to talk anyone out of leaving the classroom or quitting their job or doing anything like that. But I will encourage you to dig deep, to discover who you are outside of teaching and outside of the classroom, and to look at what makes you happy and what makes you amazing and what makes you special and what your values are and what brings you joy, and bring those to the front here. Because those are the things that I've discovered, and I wish I had discovered them sooner, because then maybe I would have stayed. But I think that's a whole different podcast episode, right? So moving forward in this podcast, I will be sharing mindset tricks. I'll be sharing experiences from my own life, meditations. I'll be sharing ahas, actionable steps that you can take to take back that balance and joy in or out of the classroom, and the things to think about if you're thinking about making a big life change. And most importantly, I'm going to challenge you to dig deep to figure out what you really want in life, because life is so short, time is fleeting, and I have this huge space in my heart for living life the way that you want to live it and becoming the person that you want to be and not holding back because of fear. And I'm all about moving from fear to freedom here. I was absolutely terrified to leave the classroom. And again, I am absolutely not trying to talk anyone into leaving, but it is part of my story, and I felt like that's why I needed to share it here on this first episode. But making big decisions in life can be hard, and I realized that, and I realized how important it is to have your own back when you're making those big decisions. And so I think for me, as part of my journey, is to help inspire other people to step into their full potential and move from fear into freedom to make changes in your life and do those things that you want to create and things that you want to do, and create a life that you really, really love, even if you're scared. And so that is what I am obsessed with now. I am obsessed with helping people, helping teachers like you, helping burnt out, exhausted teachers move from fear to freedom and take back that joy and balance in your life so you can be the best person that you can be for yourself, for your family, and most importantly, for you. So again, thank you so much for joining me today on this first episode. I'm looking forward to sharing so many more things, and I would love to hear your thoughts. If you're interested in talking more about making big decisions, about digging deep to figure out what you really want, about getting the hell out of the classroom, or about taking back balance and joy in your life, even if you're going to stay, please feel free to reach out. I'll go ahead and leave all of the links that you need in the show notes. I can't wait to hear what you think about this episode, what resonates with you, what stuck out, and if we have any similarities. So thank you again for listening, and I will see you next time. I can't wait. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Beyond the Classroom. If you know something has to change and you're ready to take the next step to make it happen, whether it's in or out of the classroom, let's talk it through together. Schedule a no-obligation chat with me, and we can talk through where you're stuck, how to get you unstuck, and how to keep you moving forward. Schedule your free call today by clicking the link in the show notes. I can't wait to connect with you.